When Olivia signed the marriage contract, she told herself it was the only way to keep her mother alive. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared her for the moment her new husband removed his mask and revealed a truth far more dangerous than any rumor she had ever heard. This was not a man hiding his scars. This was a man hiding his intentions, and tonight, in a mansion miles away from anyone who could hear her scream. Olivia realized she had stepped into a life she might never escape. Before we dive deeper, tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. And remember to subscribe so you never miss stories like this. But to understand why Olivia agreed to this marriage, we need to go back to the moment everything in her life fell apart. A year before that marriage contract was ever placed in front of her, Olivia was just a quiet bookstore clerk in a small town outside Denver, someone who found comfort in the smell of old pages and the soft hum of the heater that never quite worked. Her mother, June, was the center of her world, a woman whose laugh filled every room even when her illness began taking pieces of her strength away. Olivia tried to keep life moving as normally as she could, cooking soup that reminded her of childhood, double-checking her mother's medication, pretending she wasn't terrified every time June coughed longer than usual. But the night the doctor pulled Olivia aside and said the insurance wouldn't cover the new treatment, everything inside her collapsed. Tell me, how would you feel if someone you loved was slipping away and the only lifeline came with a price you could never afford? 2 weeks later, after exhausting every charity and every financial plan she could find, Olivia sat inside the clinic lobby fighting tears when a man in a charcoal suit approached her. He introduced himself as someone representing a private foundation, speaking with the calm confidence of a person used to being obeyed. He told her the foundation could pay for the entire treatment, every bill, every drug, every hospital night. His voice was steady, almost gentle, but Olivia couldn't ignore the way he never blinked. Then he handed her a card. On it was the name of a wealthy family in the Rockies, one known for their influence and secrecy. He said their heir, Andrew Hale, was searching for a wife. A legal arrangement. No romance, no expectations, just a contract. And in exchange, her mother's life would be saved. What would you do if your parents' survival depended on a choice that didn't feel like a choice at all? Olivia spent days staring at that card, replaying the offer until her heartbeat felt like a countdown. She researched Andrew Hale online, finding only polished interviews and a few public photos showing a man with a stiff smile that never quite reached his eyes. People called him private, reclusive, difficult to read. Nothing alarming, nothing comforting either. But each morning June woke up weaker, until one day she whispered, barely audible, "Don't give up on me." That was the moment Olivia signed. At the meeting, Andrew barely spoke. He slid the papers toward her, wearing a simple mask that covered the top half of his face. He claimed it was for privacy, something about avoiding paparazzi, and Olivia, frightened, exhausted, accepted it. She didn't ask why meetings in broad daylight needed such secrecy. She didn't question why he avoided any personal details. Would you question it? Or would desperation make you ignore the small signs that something was off? When Olivia arrived at the Hale estate, she expected a cold house with distant staff, but instead she found silence. Deep, unsettling silence that made her footsteps echo like she was trespassing. The mansion sat at the edge of a forest, so far from town that her phone lost signal before she reached the front gate. Inside, the rooms were immaculate yet strangely empty, as if someone lived there without actually living. Andrew greeted her with that same mask, offering a quiet nod rather than a smile. He told her the rules were simple: privacy, discretion, and obedience to the contract. His tone wasn't threatening, but carried a firmness she couldn't ignore. He showed her to a room at the far end of the hall, then left without another word. Olivia tried to convince herself she could endure this for her mother's sake, but part of her wondered. Had she stepped into a home or a place she would never truly leave? That first night, Olivia couldn't sleep. The house creaked with old wood settling, but occasionally she heard something else. Soft footsteps, slow and careful, moving down the hallway. She told herself it was staff completing their nightly duties until she realized she hadn't seen a single employee all day. When she finally opened her door, the hallway was empty, but a faint trail of dust had been disturbed, leading toward Andrew's study. She hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity, before quietly stepping closer. Through the cracked door, she saw Andrew sitting alone, mask off, his face turned away from her. She expected scars like the rumors suggested, but what she saw instead was a wall covered in documents, files with people's names, dates, and notes scribbled beside them. She didn't step inside, didn't speak, but something felt wrong. Why would a man need records of strangers, and why did her name appear at the top? Olivia Hale was 27, a quiet caregiver whose life had slowly narrowed down to her mother's hospital room, a stack of bills on the kitchen table, and the sound of her own breathing whenever she tried to stop herself from crying. Marion Hale, once the town's most cheerful volunteer, was now fading under a diagnosis the doctors described with careful, softened words, as if gentler language could hide how quickly things were worsening. The specialist warned Olivia that they were losing time, giving her a deadline that felt more like a countdown than medical advice. As Olivia walked home from the hospital that evening, she overheard two nurses whisper about a private benefactor who sometimes covered impossible expenses, but only for people chosen for reasons no one understood. She tried to ignore it, but that same day she noticed a black car idling near her bus stop, its tinted windows never rolling down, its engine humming as if someone was waiting specifically for her. The following morning, Olivia found a thick envelope at her door, with no sender name, no return address, and no explanation, just a contract offering full financial coverage for Marion's treatment. She stood frozen on her porch, staring at her own name typed neatly across the first page, along with details about her life she had never shared publicly, her workplace, her salary, even the date she last missed a shift to care for her mother. The signature line at the bottom was left blank beside the typed name Ethan Calder, a billionaire she only knew through rumors, stories of a reclusive man who hid from cameras and whose face, according to gossip, had been disfigured beyond repair. Olivia's hands trembled as she turned each page, realizing someone had been watching her far more closely than she ever realized, and yet the contract promised everything she needed. But who sent the contract? And why did they know so much about Olivia's life?